Kia ora koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. It's Che Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you through a range of channels tonight. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora hui hui tātou. As we wait for people just to connect on, just want to acknowledge everybody. We've had some big news today, or this evening, about going back into lockdown here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so I'm going to open up our karakia tonight, and I'm going to use the karakia that I composed last year during our lockdown, our level 4 lockdown last year. And so we'll do Maya Maranga to invoke wellness during challenging times, because it's all about connecting to each other, protecting our whakapapa to ensure that we do well. So tēnā koutou, kia ora Misty in Australia, kia ora Rich here in Hamilton. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou, kia karakia tātou. Mai maranga te rangi e tū o nei, mai maranga te papea takotoa ke nei. Mai are ki roto, mai are ki wao, euru ora, tīna toka te mana waora ki te wakatipua, mana waora ki te wakatapito. O mai te Māori ora. Ko te ora i te pū, i te wau, i te aka, i te tāmore, tenei te ora kātupu. Tuputupu nei te ora, tuputupu roroa te ora. Rere mai te wai ora. Kauru ora e ai. Hui e taikie. Taikie kia tātou katoa i roto i tēnei pō. As I said, Che Wilson here from Che's channel, Te Pai Pai Waho, sending a big mihi out to everybody that's connecting in tonight through the different streams, mindful that as Aotearoa, New Zealand, we've just received the news that we are going into lockdown tonight. And so just really it's a chance for us to focus in on giving thanks back to the land, allowing her to have a rest. Yes, it will be a stressful time for those that will be struggling to find work and all of that. So those that are able to stay at home and look after yourselves, send out some aroha and help to those that also might be struggling. I also want to acknowledge the Koroneihana and the decision to cancel the Koroneihana. I want to acknowledge our King i Tūheitia Pōtatau Te Wero Te Tuapitu, King i Tūheitia the 7th, Pōtatau the 7th, who has made the decision to cancel this year's Koroneihana. And I had the privilege of attending the memorial of the passing of his mother on Sunday, Te Ariki Nui Te Atarangi Kauhau. And it was a beautiful afternoon, evening, with the wānau there, and also one of the mokopuna being baptised. But just want to acknowledge, really sad, but it's the safest and best decision for us to protect our whakapapa. So mi kaua tu ana kia koe taku kingi, o te raki koutou katoa, ngā ringa waiwai, o tō tātou kaupapa te kingitanga. Koa korengia te Koroneihana, and though the Koroneihana has been cancelled, my kids suggested that we have a Zoroneihana, which is a Zoom Koroneihana. Hoi anō, tēnā koutou. So, this is the last session tonight on Māori organisation and collectivising ourselves. So, in the first session, we covered kōrero about how it was done traditionally. And then the next one I talked about what we've currently inherited. And a lot of it's a mess. And we're still navigating through whatever that mess is and how we try and find new iterations of it. Tonight's kōrero, excuse me, tonight's kōrero is going to be around the panacea. What would be an awesome way of doing things in the future? And for me, the awesome way of doing things in the future will be based on tikanga there will still need to be some form of legal mechanisms, simply because if you're going to deal with any money, you have to have a legal entity for it. But the Constitution will be founded on the kaupapa and the tikanga that's set for that body. And so my suggestion is that we start at a collective of like-minded people who are doing a kaupapa together, and how we work through that kaupapa to find the solutions. In addition to that, you could even do a hapu and have a hapu entity that you start, and if you can over time pass it on, that could then become the catalyst to help change the iwi entity. Start off with the hapu first, start off with the whānau first, and then grow from there, so that you're slowly over time, because we've got to check our colonised ways and views. And I'm not criticising that, I'm just noting that it's our reality. And we've got to check that so that we can then find ways of doing things differently. And so I think if we did it as a collective of like-minded people and or as a hapu, it's a great chance for us to start. And the first thing you'd have to do is set what your values are for the kaupapa and how you will behave and what that behaviour looks like and what that behaviour feels like. So that's setting the guide for your tikanga and the kawa document. The kawa document is the recorded manual that you work out through a bit of trial and error, based on your values, based on your kawa, and how you want to go forward. And if you can set it from there, that sets the intention. You then set your rules up so that's going that way, and your rules are called a kawa and the tikanga document. From there, because you've worked out what your kaupapa is, that then guides the karakia that you then compose. And I would encourage that you do a Māori karakia, irrespective of whether you have another faith. If we're wanting to lean into our kawa and our tikanga, we have to be courageous enough to focus in on horses for courses. He hu tō te hoiho, he putu tō te tangata. So it's that simple. We're focusing in on tikanga and kawa, so our karakia has to align to that. And it's not that I'm anti anything else, but it's about how do we ensure that we are speaking the language that belongs to the land and talking to the atua that are of the land and that guide us. However you want to then acknowledge your own personal beliefs, that's for you to carry personally. But as a collective, we focus in on the collective of where the kawaora comes from. And that comes from ngā atua te pō, ngā atua te ao tūroa tūnei. And so we do that, and then we start to revive other practices so that we're doing more than just meeting for whatever your kaupapa may be. And so those practices may also be seasonal practices, so that we're linking and making these things more than just theoretical, more than just stuff in a manual or a constitution, but that they're things that we're practicing in our hui and that we're coming together to then do rituals over and above our meetings for whatever the kaupapa is. So I think that's one way of doing it. And when you have your meetings, you do them overnight. You come together the night before, you discuss themes. The next day, you make decisions so that your themes are doing one thing, working out, nutting out ideas and where you're going. That could be to do with investment or development. And then the next day is all around decisions, so that you've got an intentional process that you've worked through the night before. You've slept together at the marae, had a kai, you've had a kōrero, you've got to catch up and all of those things. And then the next morning you're making decisions in an intentional space rather than a transactional space where you turn up and then piss off. Because we don't want that. We want to turn up and then carry on so that we can focus in on how we then action that mahi going forward. So those are just some ideas of how we could be doing things differently. And a key component of that is that we focus on building each other's skills so that we're then leaning back into the ariki framework that I've already shared during COVID lockdown last year in 2020, so that we're looking at how we navigate the ariki framework so that we've got different attributes and skills that we can lean on. And when we can lean on those skills and attributes, that takes us to a better place. And then if it's aligned to our kawa and our tikanga that we've set, and then the ritinga that evolve out of that, which is the habitual practices, that's going to help us be and do things differently. If we then have our karakia that acknowledges the atua of the land, and we also translate it, so that for those that are involved in the kaupapa who don't understand te reo, we're then all entering into the hui consciously because we also have a translation of it. And I encourage people to say both, the reo Māori and the English, as long as the English is required. And if you continually get new people who don't know the reo, then you keep doing it. But if after a time you feel that you've all got into the place where you all know it, then you might only do it every second time in English. But I know in the experience that I've had, doing it in English changes behaviour. Actually, not just doing it in English, but people understanding the meaning changes behaviour. And that takes us to a really new place. And as I've shared, I've got an example of doing this where there've been no arguments in the meetings. There've been, there was one time we voted, but other than that, in over 10 years now, it's always been consensus. And only a couple of few times where it's had to be taken back to another hui to have another go at it because we hadn't got consensus. I think the most important thing, though, is that we believe. We believe in the processes that our tupuna created. We are agile enough to adapt them to our context today. And through one and through conversations, we will be able to find out what works for us in our modern context. And then a cool tip that I received last year is, for me, I always check now how colonised my decisions were for the day. And that's not to shit on colonisation. It's just to acknowledge there are things that I do which could be done better and could be coming from a more Indigenous point of view rather than some of the things that I've inherited from colonisation. So ka tiake, just a quick catch up tonight. Finally, mindful of everybody and us going back into lockdown. Let's stay safe. We can do this, everybody. Let's stay safe. Let's look after ourselves. And if we can look after ourselves, that gets us to a better place. And I'm just pulling up the karakia that I also wrote during lockdown last year to close things off. I did the first karakia in the male voice. The closing of karakia I'll do in the female voice so that we're learning both oro. The male oro, the male vibration, and the female vibration. Ka tiake, stay safe. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia te tauru o te rangi kia tīna, kia wena, kia toka te manawa o ra, o mai te manawa ora ki te waka tipua, manawa ora ki te waka tauita, Māori ora ki te rangi nui e tū, nei purutia. Purutia kia au, purutia kia ma, ere ki te pau o te ora e uru ora, e uru ora. Turuturo i te uha maua kia tīna aumia ui e taiki e. Taiki kia tātou, stay safe, be well, rire rire hau, pai mārire.